Okay, so now we return. With Charlie. First of all, this is beer 3. Charlie has reacted by turning purple, which is what he does the best. I exhaled. You sure about this? Charlie demanded me, glaring at me. I'm 100% sure. I'm. I should just read this. I should just read whatever I see on the page because I think it'll be far more entertaining. I'm 100% sure about Edward, I told him without missing a beat. Getting married, though? What's the rush? He eyed me suspiciously again. The rush was due to the fact that I was getting closer to 19 every stinking day, while Edward stayed frozen in all his 17-year-old perfection as he had for over 90 years. Not that this fact necessitated marriage in my book, but the wedding was required due to the delicate and tangled compromise Edward and I had made to finally get to this point, the brink of my transformation from mortal to immortal. These weren't things I could explain to Charlie. We're going away to Dartmouth together in the fall, Charlie, Edward reminded him. I'd like to do that, well, the right way. It's how I was raised. He shrugged. He wasn't exaggerating. They'd been big on old-fashioned morals during World War I. Charlie's mouth twisted to the side, looking for an angle to argue from. But what could he say? I'd prefer you live in sin first? He was a dad. His hands were tied. Knew this was coming, he muttered to himself, frowning. Then suddenly, his face went perfectly smooth and blank. Dad? I asked anxiously. I glanced at Edward, but I couldn't read his face either as he watched Charlie. Ha! Charlie exploded. I jumped in my seat. Ha ha ha! I stared incredulously as Charlie doubled over in laughter. His whole body shook with it. I looked at Edward for a translation, but Edward had his lips pressed tightly together like he was trying to hold back laughter himself. Okay, fine, Charlie choked out. Get married. Another roll of laughter shook through him. But what? I demanded. But you have to tell your mom. I'm not saying one word to Renee. That's all yours. He bursted into loud guffaws. I paused with my hand on the doorknob, smiling. Sure. Oh, by the way, this is we're breaking, so we're moving ourselves from the flashback and returning to regular narration. I paused with my hand on the doorknob, smiling. Sure, at the time. God, that's so freaking confusing because I'm gonna remember the day, and now I'm back to the. Oh, god damn. Okay, so here's the thing of it. This is my thoughts on flashbacks. Is that flashbacks work if you're going to go do the flashback and then return to the present, but in a separate situation. If you're going to do the flashback in the middle of what you're doing, stop, remove yourself from the action, go back, flashback, go and do something, and then come right back to that next moment in the present. You're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong because that is so confusing. That is so confusing. I had to stop for a second and actually go, oh, that's right, she was walking into the house. So I have to now take my brain and go back to that moment and go, she was walking into the house, then she started thinking about this moment where she told Charlie that she was getting married, and now we're going back to walking into the house again, because we just finished talking to that dude on the phone about what's-his-face. Jacob. Sure. At the time, Charlie's words had terrified me. The ultimate doom. Telling Renee. Early marriage was higher up on her blacklist than boiling live puppies. Early marriage was higher up on her blacklist than boiling live puppies. Who could have foreseen her response? Not me. Certainly not Charlie. Maybe Alice, but I hadn't thought to ask her. Well, Bella, Renee had said after I'd choked and stuttered out the impossible words. Mom, I'm marrying Edward. I'm a little miffed that you waited so long to tell me. Plane tickets only get more expensive. Oh, she'd fretted. Do you think Phil's cast will be off by then? It will spoil the pictures if he's not in a tux. Back up a second, Mom, I gasped. So, here's the thing, is that a gasp is an intake of air. Sorry, knocked over the microphone. So a gasp is an intake of air, and this is now the second time she's given an exclamation while inhaling. So it's a back up a second, Mom. How do you do that while you're gasping? Back up a second, Mom. How does that happen? It doesn't. It's bad writing. God. Oh, what do you mean waited so long? I just got in. I'd been unable to force out the word engaged. Things settled, today. Today? Really? That is a surprise. I assumed. What did you assume? When did you assume? Well, when you came to visit me in April, it looked like things were pretty much sewn up, if you know what I mean. You're not very hard to read, sweetie. But I didn't say anything because I knew it wouldn't do any good. You're exactly like Charlie. She'd sighed, resigned. Once you make up your mind, there is no reasoning with you. Of course, exactly like Charlie. You stick by your decisions, too. And then she'd said the last thing I'd ever expected to hear from my mother. You're not making my mistakes, Bella. You sound like you're scared silly, and I'm guessing it's because you're afraid of me. She giggled. Of what I'm going to think. And I know I've said a lot of things about marriage and stupidity, and I'm not taking them back. But you need to realize that those things specifically applied to me. You're a completely different person than I am. You make your own kinds of mistakes, and I'm sure you'll have your share of regrets in life, but commitment was never your problem, sweetie. You have a better chance of making this work than most 40-year-olds I know. Renee had laughed again. My little middle-aged child. Luckily, you seem to have found another old soul. You're not mad? You don't think I'm making a humongous mistake? Well, sure, I wish you'd wait a few more years. I mean, do I look old enough to be a mother-in-law to you? Don't answer that. But this isn't about me. This is about you. Are you happy? I don't know. I'm having an out-of-body experience right now. Renee had chuckled. Does he... I forgot. We're going back into another flashback. So we went from a flashback in which we cut away, literally. So there was like a space break, so we went into a flashback. Full-on flashback to return to the present to flashback again. And not only are we flashing back again, but we're flashing back in the Does he make you happy, Bella? Yes, but are you ever going to want anyone else? No, but what? But aren't you going to say that I sound exactly like every other infatuated teenager since the dawn of time? You've never been a teenager, sweetie. You know what's best for you. It's just... It's just that Bella doesn't know what she's doing with anything. How can she know what's best for her? How? How can she know what's best for her? I've seen little to no evidence that she knows what's best for her, aside from the fact that she knows that that she knows that she's in love with Edward Cullen. This is what she knows. This is what she adheres to. Although what she knows what's best for herself, as evidenced in New Moon, being reckless and endangering herself just to hear Edward's voice in her head. That clearly is not a sign of her knowing what's best for herself. So her mom has a very biased point of view. So we've got the mom who's going along with this and is very easygoing about it. She's giving probably the most rational speech in the entire book here, which is, you're not making my mistakes, you're making your own. You do what you need to do for yourself. I'm not old enough to be a mother-in-law, but okay, you're doing what you need to do. Okay, if you love him, does he make you happy? Okay, that is actually probably a very logical, rational response, and I respect that. But here's the thing: is that Charlie, the dad, is the idiot, and goes, I'm turning purple, I'm turning blue. Oh, you got to tell your mom about it. Herpty derpty der. I'm trying to figure out what it is about Bella Swan that inspires any sort of inspiration, really. What does she do? What is it about her? For the last few weeks, Renee had unexpectedly immersed herself in wedding plans. She'd spent hours every day on the phone with Edward's mother, mother, Edward's mother, Esme. No worries about the in-laws getting along. Renee adored Esme. But then I doubted anyone could help responding that way to my lovable almost mother-in-law. It let me right off the hook. Edward's family and my family were taking care of the nuptials together without my having to do or know or think too hard about any of it. Charlie was furious, of course, but the sweet part was that he wasn't furious at me. Renee was the traitor. He'd counted on her to play the heavy. What could he do now when his ultimate threat, telling Mom, had turned out to be utterly empty? He had nothing, and he knew it, so he moped around the house, muttering things about not being able to trust anyone in this world. Okay, so now we are returning from the flashback into the present. So, let's see, how many... So on page 17, we went back into the present with her opening the door. Now here we are on page 20, with her having finished the flashback of talking to her mom and returning into the present again. Dad, I called as I pushed open the front door. I'm home. Hold on, Bells. Stay right there. Huh? I asked, pausing automatically. Give me a second. Ouch. You got me, Alice. Alice? Sorry, Charlie, Alice's trilling voice responded. How's that? I'm bleeding on it. You're fine. Didn't break the skin. Trust me. What's going on? I demanded, hesitating in the doorway. 30 seconds, please, Bella, Alice told me. Your patience will be reported. Humph, Charlie added. I tapped my foot, counting each beat. Before I got to 30, Alice said, Okay, Bella, come in. Moving with caution, I rounded the little corner into our living room. Oh, I huffed. Aw, Dad, don't you look... Silly, Charlie interrupted. I was thinking more like debonair. Charlie blushed. Alice took his elbow and tugged him around into a slow spin to showcase the pale gray tux. Now cut that out, Alice. I looked like an idiot. No one dressed by me ever looks like an idiot. She's right, Dad. You look fabulous. What's the occasion? Oh my... Alice rolled her eye. I'm just... She didn't even say who was talking. If you've got two people talking, it's okay to not go. Charlie said, Alice said. Charlie said, Alice said. If it's the only two people talking, it is okay for you to leave out the denotations of who is actually talking. There is 3 people talking. We go from Charlie blushed, Alice took his elbow and tugged him around into a slow spin to showcase the pale gray tux. We end that into, clearly Charlie is speaking. Now cut that out, Alice. I look like an idiot. Doesn't say it's Charlie speaking, but since it's addressing Alice and saying that he looks like an idiot, we must know that it's Charlie. No one dressed by me ever looks like an idiot. Now, that doesn't actually say that Alice is speaking, but we know it's Alice saying that because, she's the one who dressed him. Now, let's get rid of the whole idea of, 3 people talking for a moment. These 2 people are talking to each other. They're having a conversation. It is okay structurally speaking, to not denote that each person is saying, I mean, you don't have to go, now cut that out, Alice, Charlie said. I look like an idiot. No one dressed by me ever looks like an idiot, Alice said. You can just let them have their dialogue, that's cool. But then we have a third line in which, structurally, it should be Charlie talking, if we're not going to say who's talking. She's right, Dad, and you look fabulous. What's the occasion? But it's Bella, and it doesn't say that Bella said anything. See, it's... Okay, maybe that's a technical thing, because it was, we were able to work it out, I guess, but the fact that you have to sit there and work it out and look at it and realize that you're working it out, that is poor writing. Oh, we're almost through chapter 1. Okay, so I'm just going to finish this video. It's going to be a little bit long, but I'm just going to blaze through the last of the chapter 1, and then we'll get on. Alice rolled her eyes. It's the final check on the fit, for both of you. I peeled my gaze off the unusually elegant Charlie for the first time, and saw the dreaded white garment bag laid out carefully across the sofa. Ah. Go to your happy place, Bella. It won't take long. I sucked in a deep breath and closed my eyes. Keeping them shut, I stumbled my way up the stairs to my room. I stripped down to my underwear and held my arms straight out. You'd think I was shoving Twilight. You'd think I was shoving bamboo splinters under your nails, Alice muttered to herself as she followed me in. I paid no attention to her. I was in my happy place. In my happy place, the whole wedding mess was over and done, behind me, already repressed and forgotten. We were alone, just Edward and me. The setting was fuzzy and constantly in flux. It morphed from misty forest to cloud-covered city to Arctic night, because Edward was keeping the location of our honeymoon a secret to surprise me. But I wasn't especially concerned about the where part. Edward and I were together, and I'd fulfilled my side of our compromise perfectly. I'd married him. That was the big one. But I'd also accepted all his outrageous gifts and was registered, however futilely, to attend Dartmouth College in the fall. Now it was his turn. Before he turned me into a vampire, his big compromise, he had one other stipulation to make good on. Edward had an obsessive sort of concern over the human things that I would be giving up, the experiences he didn't want me to miss. Most of them, like the prom, for example, seemed silly to me. There was only one human experience I was worried about missing. Of course, it would be the one he wished I would forget completely. Here was the thing, though. I knew a little about what I was going to be like when I wasn't human anymore. I'd seen newborn vampires firsthand, and I'd heard all my family-to-be stories about those wild early days. For several years, my biggest personality trait was going to be thirsty. It would take some time before I could ever be me again. And even when I was in control of myself, I would never feel exactly the way I felt now. Human, and passionately in love. I wanted the complete experience before I traded in my warm, breakable, pheromone-riddled body for something beautiful, strong, and unknown. I wanted a real honeymoon with Edward, and despite the danger he feared this would put me in, he'd agreed to try. I was only vaguely aware of Alice and the slip and slide of satin over my skin. I didn't care for the moment that the whole town was talking about me. I didn't think about the spectacle that I would have to star in much too soon. I didn't worry about tripping on my train, or giggling at the wrong moment, or being too young, or the staring audience, or even the empty seat where my best friend should be. I was with Edward, in my happy place. End chapter 1.